Hello everyone. Welcome to a new lecture in the series of data-driven model predictive control. In this lecture, we will be focusing on state space neural network or SSNN, which are a particular class of recurrent neural networks used for state space modeling. Here is the overview of the lecture. We will be starting with the basic idea of state space neural network or SSNN. Then we move on to the SSNN based data-driven NMPC, which is then followed by a numerical example. In general, a state space neural network or SSNN can be considered as a special form of recurrent neural network or RNN, and it can be used for approximating nonlinear state space models. Here we are considering discrete time nonlinear system as in equation number 1, in which f is the state function, h is the output function. And in the case of SSNN, this state and output functions will be approximated using NNs as in equation number 2, where fnn is an approximation of the state function f and hnn is an approximation of the output function h. Here theta f and theta h denotes the parameters of the state and output nn's, which consist of the weights and biases. The state and output functions can be chosen as deep neural networks as in equation number 3, where the state function contains LF number of layers and the output network contains LH number of layers, and each layer will contain a weight matrix and a bias vector and an activation function. This SSNN can be considered as a special case of RNN, and this term SSNN is commonly used in the control community, and the term Elman network is also commonly used. Figure 1 represents a schematic representation of the SSNN, so in which we can see FNN and HNN. And here this FNN will take the current state xk and the input uk and predict the next state xk plus 1. And this next state will be given to the output network HNN, and which will predict the output yk plus 1 hat. In the case of SSNN, we assume the state and output functions as unknown, and the available information consists of the input and output data, which can be represented using the input and output matrices capital UD and capital YD as in equation number 4. UD will contains all the input vectors, and here we consider capital D number of samples. The output matrix YD will contains all the output vectors or output samples. Then using the initial state and this control sequence, we can predict the predicted state and output. This x1 can be represented as fnn of x0, u0, and then by recursively applying this neural network model, we can find all the predicted states till xd. Then using the predicted state, we can compute the predicted output as y1 hat will be hnn of x1 and yd hat will be hnn of xd. This we can compactly represent using the output predicted equation fyp, which will take the initial state x0 and the parameters of the state and output nn. And this function we will be using in computing the cost function in the NMPC. In the case of SSN, we define the loss function as a summation of the output prediction error across all the output samples. Here D is the number of training samples. And this we can compactly represent it as the Frobenius norm of the output matrix minus its predicted value yd hat. And this yd hat can represent using the prediction function fyp. Now these parameters theta f and theta h can be combined into a single vector theta, and using which we can define the training problem for SSNN as in equation number 7, in which the objective is to find the optimal parameter theta, which minimizes the loss function L by SSNN. Once this optimization problem is solved, we will get the optimal parameter vector theta star, using which we can define the state and output NNs. Here we will briefly discuss on some theoretical results on the approximation capabilities of SSNN, and in which we will be assuming the state function f and the output function g as Lipschitz. It means like there exists some constants such that the norm of the difference of this function across two different states x1 and x2 will be bounded by LF times the norm of x1 minus x2. And this theoretical result supports the approximation capability of SSNN, which says that we can always find an SSNN by increasing the number of hidden layers and the number of neurons that can approximate any nonlinear model satisfy this criteria. Now, in the case of SSNN-based data-driven NMPC, we will be using the identified SSNN model for computing the MPC control law. And here we are considering a state-based NMPC for which the state and control references are computed using the steady-state criteria. And by solving this equation, we can compute the steady-state and control references XR and UR for a given output reference. Then using XR and UR, we can define the cost function for NMPC as discussed in lecture number 6. And the optimization problem for NMPC can be defined as in equation number 12. So here the only difference is that instead of the actual nonlinear model, we will be using the SSNN model. And using that, we will be computing this predicted state sequence FXP. And by solving this optimization problem, we will be getting the optimal control sequence UK. And the first element of the sequence will be applied to the system. Here we summarize the algorithm for SSNN-based NMPC, in which we need the input and output data, or capital UD and capital YD. And we have to select the parameters for the state and output network, which contains the number of layers and the number of neurons per layer. We first initialize the parameter theta. Then the optimal parameters is computed by solving the SSNN training problem. Once the model is identified, we can define the parameters for the NMPC, such as prediction horizon, output reference, state and control weighting matrices. Also, we have to compute the state and control references by using the steady state equation. And then for each time instant, we have to solve the optimization problem for NMPC to find the optimal control sequence UK star. And then we will be applying the first element of the control sequence to the system. This we repeat until the end of the simulation time, capital NT. Next, we will discuss a numerical example for SSNN-based NMPC. And here, similar to the previous lecture, we will be considering CSTR example for which the state space model will be as in equation number 13. And the parameters for the CSTR will be defined as in equation number 14. And the simulation parameters for NMPC will be defined as in equation number 15. Figure 2 shows the response of the SSNN-based data-driven NMPC. Here, this first subplot will shows the training input and output, where we can see that the output predicted by the SSNN in green color and the actual output in red color, where we can see that the predicted output is closely matching with the actual output. Then in this figure B, we can see the output response with the NMPC, where this YK is the reference output in green color and the YK hat is the predicted output in the red color, where we can see that the predicted output is tracking the reference. And this figure C shows the control input corresponding to the state-based NMPC. The MATLAB codes for this numerical example can be downloaded from the link given in the description. That leads us to the end of this lecture. Thanks for watching.